Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about Pete Zwart. Um, a little preface before this. When I'm presenting, the headers go a little wonky. It probably bothers me more than it bothers you, but I thought I would just address it. Um, but yeah, anyway, Pete Zwart. Pete Zwart was born in 1885 and died in 1997. He attended the School of Applied Arts in Amsterdam from 1902 to 1907. He graduated with an emphasis in architecture, interior design, and product design. The school was very loose in its teachings. They kind of taught all forms of art and let them focus on what they wanted, which is why his degree is so broad. Throughout his life, he worked as an interior designer, industrial designer, commercial typographer, photographer, critic, and professor. He self-titled himself a typotect, which is a combination of a typographer and an architect. Most of his life he did architecture and interior design work, but he is most known for his typography work. He was always known for his radical design style. He took his work very seriously and was often stubborn towards others who questioned him. He just kind of put his head down, did whatever he wanted to do when it came to design, and that was that. In 1933, he was let go from his teaching position at an art school in Rotterdam, Netherlands, after 14 years because of his radical ideas on education. Looking back, uh, there's a lot of similarities between his teaching style and the Bauhaus school teaching styles, so that kind of gives you an idea on how he was. His legacy is that of defining modern design in the Netherlands in the 20th century. And in 2000, after his passing, he was awarded the title Designer of the Century by the Association of Dutch Designers. Zwart was never professionally trained in graphic design, but became interested when he worked as a draftsman for Jan Wils, a member of the De Stijl group. He had a few jobs before working for NFK. He worked for a flooring company, but primarily he worked on works for NFK, which was a telephone manufacturer. And when he came in with zero experience. He did not know the difference between uppercase and lowercase letters. They had to hire an 18-year-old assistant to help him with printing and just learning a few of the basics. But because he didn't really have any proper design teaching, and also because the company was pretty forgiving and loose and let him do what he wanted, it created these really unique styles of graphic design, which is what he's known for. He created 275 different designs for them in 10 years. As you can see on the left, he was able to freely experiment with small and large letters, different typefaces, circles, rectangles, angular lines, repetition. Um, he was able to experiment with all of that. I love the top image, which is a part of an advertisement. It's an advertisement booklet for the telephone manufacturer. So he took something honestly as boring as telephone wires and he made it graphically beautiful. He's kept the consistent branding in there with the primary colors. Um, so on the left, he colorized the photograph of the wire in blue and has the red circle highlighted, which is visually interesting in itself, but that red circle correlates with the next page over, which is a zoomed in look on the wires itself, and I think it's just brilliant. So this piece was an inside page to a 1931 book. He did quite a few book covers. That's about all the information I could find on it, but this is one of his most famous pieces, and I wanted to highlight it because I think it perfectly wraps up what his style was. So there's only primary colors, and then there's the repetition. So there's a few lines you can see that looks like he just held his finger on a keyboard for a while, and so the repetition of all those letters create more of a texture or a pattern look, and your brain kind of blocks out that it's letters, and you just kind of see the pattern behind it. He used multiple typefaces. You can see that there are serifs, there are sans serifs, there are scripts, there's a monotype in there, just very experimental. And also there's careful asymmetry. The poster isn't balanced, but it's also not unbalanced. So I think it's just a great example of his work. In 1931, he created some stamps. I couldn't really find any information on what these stamps were for. Obviously, they're for the Netherlands, but like what their subjects were or why he was commissioned to do them. But I thought they were important because one, stamps are cool, and two, I think as graphic designers, it's very important that our work is able to be blown up in large scale and at very small scale. That's like a key factor in a successful design. And having his work translate so clearly into these teeny tiny little stamps, I think is very important. And I also know we're in a graphic design class, but I wanted to talk about interior design. So he was hired by the Dutch company Brunsel Wood to create advertisements for them, but he ended up staying long enough and working with their interiors team to create this modular kitchen. He spent 3 years creating it and doing lots of research. He went into homes, talked to housewives, wanted to get their opinion on what they would want in a kitchen because they were going to be the end users. So the project was finished in 1938, and it was the first kitchen to be mass produced. It is easy to manufacture, modular, and inexpensive. It was one of the first like create your own kitchens, so each piece was separate. It would be like going to IKEA now and like getting to pick out whatever you want. That's pretty much the standard for getting to design your own kitchen. But he kind of manufactured that. So a few key elements to point out in his kitchen. He had spice cabinets. So instead of opening up the cabinet door and it being a flat, like, square rectangle shelf, the shelf was shaped like a U, and on the door there were some baskets. So when the door was closed, everything tucked away and fit nicely. But when you opened it, instead of having this deep shelf where you can't really see all your spices in the back, everything's lined up all nice and pretty so you can see all the stuff that you have. As you can see in the image below the upper cabinetry, there's those little shelves which just held things like measuring cups and small utensils and little things that were easily accessible. And you can also see in the image there's the pull-out cutting boards, which I find very interesting because I remember having a pull-out cutting board in my childhood home that was like built in the 80s in southern Illinois. So it's very interesting that that style, has kind of gone all over the world. He was also known for his photography, which I couldn't find a lot of information on, except that he wanted to highlight the beauties of daily life. So you can see this in the food you eat and dishes that you wash and hanging out on a blanket and getting dressed. And then the far right one is just two streaks of light in the dark. But I just really like his photography work and I thought it was important to show. So that is all. There's my works cited, and thanks for listening.